The first sound that broke the silence was not the bugle. It was a dog refusing to obey. Dawn settles over Camp Lejeune in a pale wash of silver, softening the brick buildings, the trimmed lawns, and the long rows of Marines standing at attention beneath a sky that has not yet decided whether to rain. A cool November wind moves in from the Atlantic, carrying the scent of pine, damp earth, and salt across the memorial grounds. At the center of the courtyard stands a black granite wall, polished so carefully that it reflects the folded flags, the white chairs, and the solemn faces of the families gathered before it. 20 years have passed since Master Sergeant Samuel Tate died in service, but his name still catches the morning light as if it were newly carved. Today, the base has come to remember him. Cameras wait behind a low rope barrier. A local television crew adjusts its microphones. Gold Star families sit in the first 2 rows, hands folded over programs printed with Samuel's photograph. Marines in dress blues form 2 perfect lines along the stone walkway, their shoes aligned, their shoulders squared, every movement measured by tradition. Near the front stands Gunnery Sergeant Isaiah Brooks, 38 years old, broad-shouldered, dark-skinned, and still in the way only men become still when they have spent years learning how to hold grief without letting it show. His uniform is immaculate. His jaw is firm, yet his right hand rests lightly against the white fur beside him, as if drawing strength from the warmth beneath his palm. Ghost sits at his left leg. The 6-year-old German shepherd is almost startling against the dark uniforms around him, his coat white as winter sunlight, his ears upright, his amber eyes fixed on the memorial. He has worked ceremonies before. He knows crowds, commands, music, and the disciplined silence expected of a Marine Corps K-9. He does not fidget. He does not whine. He watches. Colonel Daniel Whitaker steps toward the podium as the last conversations fade. Behind him, the American flag lifts once in the wind and settles. A ceremonial bugler raises his instrument. The first notes of taps move across the courtyard, thin and clear, floating above the stone like a prayer no one dares interrupt. Isaiah feels Ghost shift. It is barely a movement at first, only a tightening through the dog's shoulders. Then his nose lifts. He draws in the air once, slowly, and turns his head toward the base of Samuel Tate's name. Isaiah glances down. "Stay," he whispers. Ghost remains seated, but his gaze does not leave the granite. The final note fades. Colonel Whitaker opens a leather folder and begins speaking about duty, sacrifice, and the promises Marines keep to one another. Ghost rises. Isaiah's fingers close around the lead. "Heel." The dog takes one step forward. Not hurried, not confused, deliberate. Isaiah gives the command again, firmer this time. "Ghost. Heel." Several Marines notice. A captain near the aisle turns his head. Ghost looks back at Isaiah, and for one quiet second, man and dog hold each other's eyes. There is no fear in the animal's face, no disobedience for its own sake. There is only certainty. Then Ghost slips gently past Isaiah's leg and walks into the open aisle. The movement draws every gaze. White fur crosses between rows of midnight blue uniforms. A child in the front row leans toward her mother. One of the camera operators lowers his hand from the lens, unsure whether to keep filming. Colonel Whitaker pauses mid-sentence. Ghost continues toward the memorial. His nails make soft, measured clicks against the stone walkway until he reaches the granite wall and stops beneath Samuel Tate's engraved name. He lowers his nose to the earth. Once, twice. Then he places his right paw on a narrow strip of grass beside the foundation. Isaiah approaches carefully, embarrassment tightening across his chest. "Ghost, come." The dog does not move. "Come." Ghost presses his nose deeper into the grass, inhales, and begins to dig. Damp soil scatters across the polished stone. A murmur passes through the seated families. One officer steps forward, but Colonel Whitaker raises a hand, stopping him. Isaiah reaches the dog and grips the lead close to the collar. "That's enough." Ghost freezes. For a heartbeat, Isaiah thinks the command has finally reached him. Then the shepherd turns, looks directly at him, and gives one low breath that sounds almost like sorrow. He places both front paws over the shallow hole, guarding it. Isaiah kneels, feeling the wet earth soak through the knee of his trousers. "What is it, boy?" Ghost lowers his head again and scratches once more. His paw strikes something beneath the soil. A clear metallic sound rings out under the memorial stone. Small, hollow, impossible to mistake. The courtyard falls silent, and every face turns toward the ground beneath Samuel Tate's name. For several seconds, no one moved. The metallic notes seemed to remain beneath the memorial, trembling in the damp earth long after Ghost had stopped digging. Isaiah kept one hand on the white German shepherd's collar and looked toward Colonel Daniel Whitaker, waiting for an order that would restore the ceremony to something familiar. The colonel closed the leather folder in front of him. His face revealed nothing, but the silence around the courtyard had changed. It was no longer reverent. It was watchful. Major Andrew Collins, the officer responsible for security that morning, stepped away from the edge of the formation and approached with measured urgency. Gunnery Sergeant Brooks, remove the dog from the memorial grounds. Isaiah felt the words land harder than they should have. Dozens of Marines were watching him. Gold Star families were watching him. A television camera remained pointed toward the granite wall, its small red light glowing through the gray morning. Yes, sir, Isaiah said. He shortened the lead and leaned closer to Ghost. Up. Ghost did not rise. The shepherd lowered his chest over the shallow hole and stretched his front legs across the disturbed soil. His white coat, clean only minutes before, was now streaked with brown earth. Isaiah gave a gentle pull. Ghost's body became heavy and still, not resisting with anger, but anchoring himself with the quiet determination of something that had already made a choice. Ghost, Isaiah whispered. Do not do this here. One amber, I turned toward him. The dog's breathing was slow. His ears remained forward, aimed at the ground beneath Samuel Tate's name. Major Collins stopped a few feet away. Gunnery Sergeant, that foundation may contain electrical lines or drainage equipment. We cannot allow him to damage it. He is not trained to alert on electrical equipment, sir. Then perhaps he is distracted. Isaiah looked down at the animal who had crossed crowded airfields without breaking command, ignored food placed inches from his nose during training, and remained motionless through thunder, engines, sirens, and rifle salutes. Ghost did not become distracted. Not like this. Isaiah crouched and slid both hands beneath the dog's chest. Come on, boy. Ghost rose halfway, then twisted back toward the hole and pressed one paw over it. A faint sound escaped his throat. It was not a growl. It was not a bark. It was a low, aching whine, so soft that Isaiah felt it more than heard it. The sound passed through him with the weight of an old memory. He had heard Ghost make it only once before, outside a hospital room where a retired handler had taken his final breath. The dog had lain beside that closed door for hours, guarding what no command could bring back. Isaiah loosened his grip. Around them, uniforms shifted. Shoes whispered against the walkway. Someone in the family section began to cry quietly, though no one yet understood why. Major Collins reached for the lead. Ghost immediately lowered himself again, covering the place with his body. Isaiah stepped between them. The movement was instinctive, but respectful. Sir, give me 1 minute. Collins narrowed his eyes. This ceremony is being broadcast. I understand. Then you understand what this looks like. Isaiah did. A senior Marine unable to control his assigned dog. A solemn tribute interrupted. Fresh soil scattered against a monument that families had traveled hundreds of miles to visit. By noon, a short recording could cross every military page in the country, stripped of context and mercy. Yet Ghost was not looking at the cameras. He was not looking at the officers. He was guarding the earth. Colonel Whitaker descended from the platform and approached without hurry. The Marines nearest him straightened further, though there was no more straightness left to give. He stopped beside Isaiah and studied the hole. What did he strike? I do not know, sir. Whitaker looked at Ghost. Has he ever ignored you before? Isaiah swallowed. No, sir. Not once. Not once. The colonel's gaze moved towards Samuel Tate's engraved name. Moisture from the morning air had collected in the carved letters, making them appear darker than the surrounding stone. Then we do not assume he chose today to forget his training. Major Collins glanced toward the seated families. Colonel, with respect, we should clear the area and call base maintenance. Do that, Whitaker said. But no one moves the dog until we know what is beneath him. The order passed quietly through the formation. A maintenance team was contacted. The bugler lowered his instrument. The flags continued to stir above them, their fabric making a soft, steady sound like distant surf. Isaiah knelt beside Ghost and brushed loose dirt from the dog's shoulder. Beneath one white paw, something narrow protruded from the soil. It looked at first like a root, darkened by water and age. Then the wind shifted a few strands of grass aside, revealing cracked brown leather and the dull edge of a small brass buckle. A woman in the front row rose so suddenly that her printed program slipped from her lap. Margaret Tate was 71 now, silver-haired and slight, dressed in a navy coat fastened neatly at the throat. She moved toward the memorial with one hand pressed against her chest. Colonel Whitaker turned to stop her, but the expression on her face held him silent. She came within a few feet of Ghost and stared at the strip of leather beneath his paw. Her lips parted. For a moment, no sound came. Then she whispered, "I know that collar." Margaret Tate does not step closer at first. She stands where the stone walkway meets the grass, one hand still pressed against her chest, her eyes fixed on the narrow strip of leather beneath Ghost's white paw. The wind lifts the silver hair near her temple, but she seems not to feel it. Colonel Whitaker speaks gently. "Mrs. Tate, are you certain?" Margaret nods once. Samuel repaired that buckle himself. Her voice is thin, yet steady enough to carry across the silent courtyard. He said the issued ones opened too easily in wet weather. Isaiah looks down at the worn brass, then at Ghost. The shepherd remains motionless, his body curved protectively around the shallow hole. A base maintenance truck arrives beyond the rope barrier, its tires whispering over the damp pavement. Two workers approach with hand tools, but Colonel Whitaker signals for them to wait. Margaret lowers herself carefully beside Isaiah. From this close, he can see how deeply the years have settled around her eyes. She does not reach for the collar. Instead, she holds her hand a few inches above it, as though touching the leather might disturb something still sleeping beneath the earth. "His name was Major," she says. The name moves through Isaiah like the first note of a song remembered from childhood. Samuel Tate had spoken it many times, usually late at night when the barracks had gone quiet and the younger Marines believed their senior leaders carried no ghosts of their own. Isaiah had been 22 then, newly assigned, eager to prove that discipline could silence every fear. Samuel had been the kind of Marine who never raised his voice unless the wind made it necessary. He taught men how to read terrain, how to listen before acting, and how to recognize the difference between courage and pride. On rare evenings, when coffee replaced sleep and rain tapped against the windows, he spoke about a German shepherd with a dark sable coat and one ear that leaned slightly to the left. Major had served beside him for nearly 5 years. He could smell a storm before the clouds knew it was coming. Samuel once told Isaiah. There had been a small smile on his face then, the sort that appeared only when he spoke of the dog. He never cared about rank. That made him smarter than most of us. The younger Marines had laughed, but Samuel had not been joking. He said Major had guided lost patrols through fog, found injured men hidden beyond sight, and refused to leave anyone alone after nightfall. Whenever Isaiah asked what became of him, Samuel's expression changed. The warmth would close like a door. He finished his duty, was all he would say. Years later, Isaiah searched the old unit records while preparing a heritage display. He found Samuel's commendations, mission summaries, photographs, and transfer orders. Major appeared only once, buried in a supply report beneath identification numbers and equipment codes. The line described him as a military working dog lost during operations. No story, no recognition, no name carved in stone. Isaiah had confronted Samuel in the armory the next morning. "You said he saved Marines." Samuel continued cleaning dust from an old display case. "He did. Then why is there nothing about him?" Samuel stopped. For a long moment, the only sound was the soft drag of cloth across glass. Then he looked at Isaiah with tired eyes. Some heroes disappear because no one thought to write their names down. Isaiah had expected anger. What he heard was regret. He never asked again. Now, kneeling beneath Samuel's memorial 20 years later, Isaiah realizes Ghost has placed his paw over the very name history failed to keep. Margaret studies him as if she can see the memory passing across his face. "Samuel never forgave himself," she says. "For Major?" Isaiah asks. Her gaze returns to the earth. For what the official record turned him into. One of the maintenance workers kneels on the opposite side and begins loosening the soil with a narrow wooden tool. Ghost watches every movement, ears forward, but allows the man to work. Inch by inch, the leather emerges. It is not merely a broken strap. It is a full collar, dark with age, folded beneath the ground as carefully as a letter placed inside an envelope. A dull metal tag rests against it. The worker brushes away the dirt. For stamped letters appear beneath his thumb. M-A-J-O-R. Margaret closes her eyes. A quiet breath leaves her, carrying 2 decades of waiting with it. Isaiah removes his dress glove and touches the edge of the tag. The metal is cold. Ghost lowers his head and presses his nose against Isaiah's wrist. For a moment, man, dog, and memory remain joined above the open earth. Then Ghost pulls away. He turns toward the hole again, inhales slowly, and fixes his gaze on something deeper. His body becomes still. Isaiah recognizes the signal immediately. The collar is not what brought him here. There is something else beneath it. Isaiah studies the change in Ghost before anyone else notices it. The white shepherd is no longer guarding the collar. His nose hovers above the open earth, drawing in slow, careful breaths, while his amber eyes remain fixed on the darkness below. The muscles along his shoulders tighten. His ears angle forward. He has found the first answer, but not the reason he came. There is more, Isaiah says. Major Collins steps closer, keeping his voice low. More of what? Isaiah does not look away from Ghost. I do not know, sir. The maintenance worker lifts Major's collar from the soil with both hands and places it on a clean white cloth. Margaret watches as the old leather settles beside the memorial, curved as though it still remembers the shape of the dog who wore it. Her fingers tremble near the brass tag, but she does not touch it. Ghost lowers one paw into the shallow opening and scrapes gently. Another metallic sound rises from below, deeper than before. Not the bright ring of a buckle. Something broad. Something hollow. Colonel Whitaker turns toward the waiting maintenance team. Check the foundation plans. One worker opens a weatherproof case and removes a rolled set of drawings. The paper crackles in the wind as he spreads it across the stone walkway. Blue lines show the memorial wall, the drainage trench, and the concrete footing set beneath the granite. He studies them twice, then shakes his head. There should be nothing directly under that section, Colonel. The original footing ends about 18 inches to the east. Could the plans be wrong? Whitaker asks. Not by that much. A second vehicle arrives carrying 2 engineering specialists from base facilities. They bring a compact ground scanner, no larger than a toolbox, and move with the calm precision of men who understand that old structures often keep secrets their builders never documented. The ceremony remains paused. No one returns to a seat. The families stand beneath the gray sky, drawn together by the quiet mystery unfolding at Samuel Tate's name. Even the television crew has stopped shifting. Equipment. The red camera light remains on, but the courtyard no longer feels like a broadcast. It feels private, as though everyone present has stepped into a room where the past is about to speak. Isaiah guides Ghost back 3 feet while the specialists pass the scanner over the disturbed ground. The dog obeys now, but only because Isaiah keeps one hand against his chest. Ghost leans into the contact, his gaze following every inch of the machine's path. A row of green lights appears on the scanner. Then one turns amber. The operator moves the device again, slower this time. The amber light returns in the same place. There is a cavity, he says, about 2 feet below the surface, roughly 20 inches long and 12 inches wide. Major Collins looks toward the memorial wall. Could it weaken the foundation? It is outside the load line. Whoever placed it there knew where the concrete ended. The words settle heavily. This was not debris left during construction. It was hidden with care. Colonel Whitaker orders the area cleared by another 10 feet, then kneels beside Isaiah. Can your dog remain calm while they open it? Isaiah strokes the fur beneath Ghost's collar. He will remain calm if he can see what they are doing. The specialists begin removing soil by hand. No shovels strike the ground. No machinery interrupts the stillness. They use narrow wooden tools and soft brushes, lifting the earth in small layers. The smell of wet clay rises into the cold air. Ghost watches without blinking. Each time a hand reaches into the opening, his nose moves, testing the scent. Margaret stands beside Colonel Whitaker with Major's collar held carefully against her coat. She has finally touched it. Her thumb rests over the worn name tag, tracing the letters Samuel once traced. He kept everything, she says quietly. Isaiah looks at her. Master Sergeant Tate? Every letter. Every photograph. Even Major's first training leash. She draws a slow breath. But not this collar. Samuel told me it had been lost. The engineer brushes aside the final layer of dirt. A flat metal surface appears beneath the roots, darkened with age but free of rust. Its edges have been coated in thick yellow wax. 2 canvas straps cross the lid, their fibers stiff but unbroken. It is an ammunition container, Major Collins says. An old one, the engineer replies. Sealed against water. Isaiah feels Ghost shift beside him. The shepherd gives a single quiet breath and sits. For the first time since leaving formation, the tension leaves his body. Whatever called him to this place is no longer hidden from the light. The specialists widen the opening and lift the container slowly. It is heavier than its size suggests. Damp soil falls from the bottom as they place it on the white cloth beside Major's collar. Margaret steps forward, then stops. Across the lid, beneath the cracked wax and years of earth, someone has carved 2 words by hand. The letters are uneven, cut deeply into the metal by a blade held with patience rather than skill. Colonel Whitaker wipes the surface with his glove. Everyone near the memorial can read them now. For both. The words on the lid seem to draw the entire courtyard closer. For both. Isaiah reads them once, then again, but their meaning remains just beyond reach. Colonel Whitaker asks the engineering team to inspect the container before anyone touches the latches. One specialist checks the seams, the hinges, and the wax with a small handheld detector. After several quiet minutes, he looks up. It is safe to open, Colonel. Margaret Tate stands beside the memorial, holding Major's collar against her navy coat. Ghost sits at Isaiah's knee, his white fur marked with damp soil, his attention fixed on the metal box, as though he has been waiting years to see it opened. Colonel Whitaker kneels and removes his gloves. He breaks the brittle wax from the first latch, then the second. The sound is small, almost ordinary, but it passes through the gathered Marines like the turning of a key in a long-locked door. When he lifts the lid, the faint scent of canvas, machine oil, and old paper rises into the cold morning air. Inside, every item has been wrapped separately and arranged with military precision. A folded cloth rests on top. Beneath it are a pair of weathered identification tags, a stack of photographs tied with faded green cord, a sealed envelope, and a compact cassette recorder protected inside a clear plastic pouch. Isaiah recognizes Samuel Tate's identification tags before the colonel reads the name. The edges are worn smooth. Samuel used to roll them between his fingers whenever he was thinking, a quiet habit that disappeared only when a decision had been made. Margaret lowers Major's collar and reaches toward them, but her hand stops above the box. Those were returned to me, she says. After Samuel died, they gave me his tags. Colonel Whitaker turns one over. A shallow scratch runs across the back, shaped almost like a crescent. Margaret looks at it and shakes her head. The ones they gave me did not have that mark. Isaiah feels the morning grow colder. The tags in the box are the originals. Whatever was returned to Margaret had been a replacement set. Colonel Whitaker opens the folded cloth. Inside rests a second metal tag, smaller and rounder, stamped with Major's service number. The number is still clear. The dog had not vanished into a line of forgotten equipment after all. Samuel had preserved his name. One of the photographs shows a much younger Samuel kneeling beside Major near a row of transport vehicles. The German shepherd's coat is dark and strong, his left ear leaning slightly to one side exactly as Samuel once described. Another photograph shows them beneath a canvas shelter, Samuel asleep in a folding chair while Major sits awake beside him, watching the open distance. The final image is different. It shows 4 Marines standing together with Major in front. Isaiah recognizes Samuel, but the others are men whose names he has heard at memorial services, men who later returned home, raised families, and grew old enough to attend ceremonies like this one. On the back, Samuel has written a date and 5 words. He brought everyone home. Margaret presses her fingers to her lips. Ghost leans against Isaiah's leg, steady and warm. Colonel Whitaker removes the cassette recorder from its pouch. The plastic has clouded with age, but the device appears intact. A facilities technician brings a portable power unit from the maintenance truck and connects it carefully. For several seconds, nothing happens. Then the recorder clicks. The reels begin to turn. Static rises through the courtyard speakers after the technician links the recorder to the ceremony sound system. A low hiss moves beneath the flags, the stone, and the waiting sky. Then Samuel Tate's voice returns after 20 years. It is older than Isaiah remembers from their first deployment, but calm, measured, and unmistakable. My name is Master Sergeant Samuel Tate. If this recording is being heard, then someone found what I could not carry openly. Margaret closes her eyes. Isaiah stands perfectly still. Samuel continues. This account belongs to Major, not to me. The tape crackles, followed by a long breath. During an evacuation outside Al-Qaim, visibility dropped until we could barely see 10 feet ahead. Communications failed. Several Marines became separated from the transport route. Major found them by scent. He led the first man back, then turned around before anyone gave him an order. He went out again and returned with a second. Then a third. No one in the courtyard moves. Even the wind seems to lower itself around the voice. Each time, I told him to stay. Each time, he looked at me as though I had forgotten what he had been trained to do. A faint warmth enters Samuel's recorded voice, the sound of an old memory touching him despite the sorrow beneath it. Major did not understand medals. He did not understand reports, ceremonies, or the difference between an officer and a private. He understood only that someone was missing. Static interrupts the tape, then clears. He went back one final time. The area became unsafe, and the evacuation had to continue. We waited as long as we were permitted. Major did not return before we left. Margaret bows her head over the collar. Isaiah feels Ghost press closer. Samuel's voice grows quieter. The official report says I guided those Marines home. That is not true. Major did. I followed him. Every man in that photograph lived because a dog refused to accept that anyone should be left alone. The recording pauses. A soft click suggests Samuel believed he had finished, but the reels continue turning. Then his voice returns, nearer to the microphone. There is one more truth. The report you were given was not the whole truth. The cassette turns beneath a veil of static, and Samuel Tate's voice returns with the weight of a confession carried too long. The report was changed at my request. A quiet stir passes through the courtyard, but no one speaks. Colonel Whitaker remains beside the open container, one hand resting near the recorder. Margaret holds Major's collar against her heart. Isaiah feels Ghost lean into his leg, warm and steady beneath the cold November wind. Samuel continues. No officer ordered the truth removed. No clerk made a mistake. I asked for my statement to be shortened, and I allowed the official account to credit me for what Major had done. His voice is calm, but the pauses between his words reveal the burden beneath them. At the time, I believed I was protecting people. Major had been assigned through a military working dog program, and his first handler had already lost too much. I was told that the family who raised him before service might receive a formal notice describing him as missing. I thought a shorter report would spare them details that would offer no comfort. I told myself that silence could be mercy. Margaret's eyes open slowly. The wind presses her coat against her narrow frame as she listens to the voice of the man she buried 2 decades earlier. Samuel never told me this, she whispers. Isaiah does not answer. The recording has turned the courtyard into something more than a memorial ground. It has become a place of witness. Samuel's voice continues. But mercy built on an unfinished truth does not remain mercy. It becomes a shadow. The Marines Major brought back received their lives. I received recognition. Major received one line in an inventory record. The tape crackles. Somewhere beyond the courtyard, a gull calls from the direction of the coast. The sound fades before Samuel speaks again. I tried to correct it later. The documents had been filed, the commendations approved, and the unit had moved forward. Each person I asked told me the same thing. The story was already settled. I should let it rest. Isaiah looks toward Samuel's name on the granite. He remembers the older Marines standing alone after evening formation, staring at nothing for longer than a man should. He remembers the careful way Samuel spoke about honor, never as something worn on a uniform, but as a debt paid in private. For years, Isaiah believed those lessons came from confidence. Now he understands they came from regret. So I kept Major's collar, Samuel says. I kept his service tag and the photographs of the men he returned to us. I placed my original identification tags beside his because the public record had separated what duty had joined. If my name was remembered, it should have been remembered with it. Colonel Whitaker lowers his head. Major Collins, who had first ordered Ghost away, removes his cap and holds it against his chest. Around him, other Marines do the same, one by one, until the courtyard is filled with uncovered heads beneath the pale sky. Samuel's recorded breath moves close to the microphone. Years later, when this memorial was planned, I helped review the original site drawings. I knew where the foundation ended. I placed this container beneath the ground before the final stonework was completed. I did not hide it because I wanted mystery. I hid it because I lacked the courage to stand before the command and say that the story carrying my name was incomplete. Margaret presses her thumb over the letters on Major's tag. There is no anger in her face. Only sorrow for a man who believed confession required permission. Ghost turns his head toward her, then settles on the earth between her and Isaiah. His white coat nearly touches the dark collar in her hands. I intended to return, Samuel says. I intended to speak when I found the right moment. Then another assignment came, and I learned that the right moment is often the name fear gives to a day that never arrives. Isaiah closes his eyes. He knows what follows before Samuel says it. The final deployment. The last conversation. The promise to finish unfinished work. If you are hearing this, Samuel continues, then I did not come back to open the box myself. Do not mistake that for fate. This was my delay, my choice, and my responsibility. The honesty in his voice is neither dramatic nor pleading. It is simple. That makes it heavier. Major deserved the truth, while people still remembered his bark. I waited until only paper could speak for him. The recorder clicks softly, but the tape continues. Isaiah notices the sealed envelope still lying inside the container. His name is written across the front in Samuel's unmistakable hand. Before anyone can reach for it, the voice from the speaker lowers to nearly a whisper. There is a Marine standing somewhere beyond this recording who believes he failed me. Isaiah Brooks, the final part of this truth belongs to you. Isaiah does not move when his name comes through the speakers. For one long second, the courtyard seems to narrow around him until there is only the open container, Samuel Tate's voice, and Ghost pressed against his leg. The white shepherd lifts his head and looks up at him, calm and unwavering, as though he has already heard the words that have not yet been spoken. The recorder turns. Static moves softly beneath Samuel's breathing. Isaiah, you were 24 years old when we received the order to leave that valley. You had already helped 2 Marines reach the evacuation point, and you came back for me when I told you not to. Isaiah's right hand closes around the edge of his uniform coat. The memory has never left him. It returns in fragments, not with sharp images, but with the small things that grief preserves. Dust against his teeth. Wind pushing through the narrow pass. Samuel's hand gripping his shoulder. The sound of an aircraft waiting somewhere beyond the ridge. Isaiah had found him near an abandoned stone wall, exhausted but standing. Samuel had pointed toward the evacuation route and ordered him to go. Isaiah had refused. He had promised they would leave together. You argued with me, Samuel says on the tape, and a trace of old affection enters his voice. You said no Marine should walk away while another remained behind. I told you that obedience sometimes feels like betrayal when the heart has not yet learned the difference. Isaiah lowers his eyes. He remembers Samuel removing his own identification tags and pushing them into Isaiah's hand. He remembers closing his fingers around the metal and trying to give them back. Samuel had not allowed it. You did not leave me. The recording continues. I sent you home. I placed you on that aircraft because one of us had to return with the names of the men who served beside us. You were not the Marine who abandoned his leader. You were the Marine trusted to carry what remained. A quiet breath moves through the families gathered near the memorial. Margaret Tate looks toward Isaiah, and the sorrow in her face is joined by something gentler. Recognition. She has known the shape of Samuel's absence for 20 years. Now she sees the shape Isaiah has carried beside it. The sealed envelope rests inside the box, his name written across the front in Samuel's careful block letters. Colonel Whitaker lifts it, but he does not open it. He holds it out to Isaiah. This belongs to you. Isaiah steps forward. His legs feel steady only because Ghost rises with him. The shepherd walks at his side without command, matching each pace until they reach the container. Isaiah accepts the envelope with both hands. The paper is dry, preserved by wax and time. Samuel's handwriting crosses the front exactly as it did on training reports and birthday cards sent from distant bases. Isaiah Brooks. To be read when he is ready to forgive himself. His throat tightens. He does not open it yet. Samuel's voice continues through the speaker. I knew what you would believe after I was gone. You would remember the final order and call it failure. You would replay every mile home and think distance had made you disloyal. I should have told you before we separated, but I believed there would be another morning. That was my mistake. Ghost presses his shoulder against Isaiah's knee. The contact is light, almost invisible to anyone more than a few feet away, but Isaiah feels it with the clarity of a hand laid across an old wound. Listen carefully, Samuel says. Guilt is not proof of love. It is only proof that love has nowhere to go. Do not build a home for it inside you. Isaiah closes his eyes. For years, he has lived by routines no one questioned. Early mornings, perfect uniforms, long hours training dogs that never asked why he avoided photographs from his first unit. He told himself discipline was strength. He understands now that much of it was hiding. The cassette crackles again. You came back for me. That is the truth. I ordered you to leave. That is also the truth. Both can exist without making either of us a coward. A tear reaches Isaiah's cheek before he can stop it. He does not wipe it away. Around him stand Marines who have seen men endure storms, loss, and long roads home. Not one of them looks away. Margaret steps closer and places Major's collar beside the envelope in Isaiah's hands. The old leather touches Samuel's letter, joining the two promises at last. He trusted you, she says. Isaiah looks at her. I thought I failed him. Margaret shakes her head. Samuel did not write to a man he blamed. He wrote to the man he believed would remember. The recording grows quieter, Samuel's final words nearly carried off by the wind. Isaiah, carry the names. But do not carry the sentence you gave yourself. You have served long enough beneath a verdict I never wrote. The reel's slow. Go home when your duty ends. Let someone stand beside you. And when a good dog refuses to leave a place, pay attention. They often hear what pride and sorrow make us miss. The cassette clicks. This time, the reels stop. No music follows. No one speaks. Isaiah kneels beside Ghost and rests his forehead against the shepherd's white fur. For the first time in 20 years, the silence does not accuse him. It releases him. Colonel Whitaker stands beside the silent recorder for several moments, his eyes resting on Samuel Tate's name as if the stone itself has asked him a question. The prepared speech remains closed on the podium. The printed ceremony program lies untouched beneath his hand. Around him, Marines wait without shifting. Families hold one another. And the white German shepherd remains close to Isaiah Brooks, his shoulder pressed against the man he has just helped free from 20 years of blame. Whitaker finally turns toward the formation. The ceremony we planned is no longer the ceremony we need. His voice carries clearly across the courtyard, steady but stripped of official distance. He looks toward the honor guard, then toward the open container and the collar Margaret Tate holds against her coat. Today, we came to remember one Marine. We have learned that one name was never enough. Major Collins lowers his gaze. Colonel Whitaker walks to the memorial wall and places one bare hand beneath Samuel's engraved name. Master Sergeant Samuel Tate served with courage. Major served with loyalty, no report fully recorded. One wore identification tags. One wore a collar. Both answered when others were missing. He turns to a staff sergeant standing near the ceremonial supplies. Bring me the temporary dedication panel. The staff sergeant hesitates only a second before moving toward a covered table beside the podium. Two Marines lift a rectangular bronze panel prepared for the anniversary. It was meant to be installed later that afternoon beneath Samuel's name, carrying a brief statement about service and sacrifice. Colonel Whitaker asks them to turn it around. The unfinished back faces the crowd, smooth and empty beneath the gray light. We will not wait for paperwork to begin correcting the record, he says. A Marine from the facilities team offers a piece of white marking chalk from his tool case. Whitaker accepts it and writes slowly across the bronze. The letters are imperfect, but every stroke is deliberate. Master Sergeant Samuel Tate. Beneath it, he writes, and military working dog major. When he steps aside, the names stand together for the first time. No polished engraving. No official seal. Only white letters made by hand in front of those who now know why they matter. The Marines remove their caps again. Some bow their heads. Others look directly at the names, refusing to let the moment pass unseen. Colonel Whitaker faces Isaiah. Gunnery Sergeant Brooks, bring Ghost forward. Isaiah looks down. Ghost is already standing. The shepherd's white coat carries traces of the earth he opened, and one muddy paw has left a faint mark on the stone walkway. Isaiah does not brush it away. Together they move toward the memorial, their steps slow and matched. When they reach the front, Colonel Whitaker gestures toward the wreath resting beside the podium. It is made of evergreen branches, white roses, and a single red ribbon bearing the emblem of the United States Marine Corps. You and Ghost will place it, he says. Isaiah takes one side of the wreath. A young corporal takes the other, but Ghost steps beneath the curve of greenery and places his nose against the lower ribbon. Isaiah understands. He lowers the wreath slightly, allowing the dog to walk beside it. They carry it the final few feet together. At the base of the memorial, Isaiah kneels and sets the wreath beneath the handwritten names. Ghost sits beside him, facing the stone. His posture is straight, his ears forward, his breathing calm. Margaret approaches with Major's collar in both hands. She stops before the wreath and studies the faded green cord wrapped around the photographs inside the container. Then she looks at the red ribbon crossing the flowers. With Colonel Whitaker's permission, she unties a narrow length from the wreath and threads it carefully through Major's old brass buckle. Her fingers are slow, but they do not tremble now. When the ribbon is secure, she places the collar above the roses. The aged leather rests against fresh evergreen, the past held gently by something still living. Ghost leans forward and touches his nose to Major's name tag. Margaret lowers her hand to the shepherd's head. Thank you for finding him, she whispers. Isaiah stands beside her, Samuel's sealed letter held safely inside his coat. Colonel Whitaker returns to the podium, but he does not open the original speech. Instead, he looks toward the bugler. One more time. The Marine raises the instrument. The first note of taps rises into the cold air, clearer now than before. This time, no one hears it only for Samuel. They hear it for Major, for every loyal animal reduced to a number, and for every truth that waited beneath silence until someone chose to listen. When the final note fades, Colonel Whitaker reads both names aloud. Master Sergeant Samuel Tate. Military Working Dog Major. The formation answers as one. Present. Ghost lifts his head toward the sound. Then, he settles beside the wreath, keeping watch as the ceremony begins again. 3 weeks later, morning returns to the memorial under a sky washed clean by rain. The grass has dried. The temporary chalk letters are gone. In their place, a new bronze plate rests beneath the polished granite, its surface dark and quiet except where the first sunlight touches the engraved names. Master Sergeant Samuel Tate. Military Working Dog Major. The letters are equal in size, equal in depth. No line of inventory language separates them now. No official phrase hides one behind the other. Isaiah Brooks stands several feet away in his service uniform, one hand resting near Ghost's collar. The white German shepherd is clean again, though Isaiah can still remember the earth clinging to his paws and the soft metallic sound that changed everything. Only a small group has gathered for the installation. Colonel Whitaker, Major Collins, Margaret Tate, 2 retired Marines from Samuel's old unit, a facilities crew. No cameras wait behind ropes. No microphones rise above the stone. The correction does not need an audience to be real. Margaret steps toward the plaque carrying Major's restored collar inside a clear memorial case. The leather has been cleaned but not polished. Its cracks remain. The brass buckle still bears the dark marks of age. Samuel would have wanted it left honest, she says. Isaiah understands. Some things should not be made to look untouched. The case is secured beside the plaque beneath a small inscription explaining that Major returned 3 missing Marines and served beside Samuel Tate with uncommon loyalty. The wording is simple. It does not call him an object. It does not call him equipment. It calls him by his name. Colonel Whitaker reads the inscription once, then looks toward the larger granite wall. The review is underway, he says. Every working dog connected to this unit will be identified where records allow it. Major Collins nods. He has spent the last 3 weeks searching archives, contacting retired handlers, and reading reports written before he entered the Marine Corps. He found numbers without names, service dates without stories, and photographs, labeled only with locations. Now each number has become a question someone is finally willing to ask. Isaiah looks down at Ghost. You started something, boy. Ghost turns one ear toward him, but keeps his eyes on the memorial. Margaret smiles faintly. Perhaps he finished something. After the plaque is secured, the others slowly leave. Colonel Whitaker returns to headquarters. The facility's crew loads its tools. The retired Marines walk with Margaret toward the parking area, speaking Samuel's name without lowering their voices. Isaiah remains behind. He has brought the sealed letter with him. He did not open it on the morning it was found. He waited until that evening, sitting at his kitchen table while Ghost slept beside his chair. Samuel's message was only 2 pages long. It held no hidden instructions, no final request, no dramatic farewell. It told Isaiah to stop measuring loyalty by the moment of separation. It told him to remember the years before it. It told him to build a life broad enough to hold both duty and peace. At the bottom, Samuel had written one final sentence. A Marine carries names, not chains. Isaiah folds the letter now and returns it to the inside pocket of his coat. Ghost walks to the plaque and lowers himself beneath it. The shepherd rests his chest against the cool ground, white fur bright beside the dark stone. Sunlight moves slowly across the engraved names until it reaches Major's. Isaiah sits on the low bench facing the memorial. For years, quiet places invited the same memory. The final order. The aircraft lifting away. Samuel growing smaller in the distance. Isaiah had treated the scene like a verdict, returning to it whenever joy came too close, as though peace would dishonor the man who did not return. Today, the memory changes. He still sees Samuel standing there. But now he hears the rest. One of us has to carry the names. A breeze moves through the pine trees and across the open courtyard. It stirs the small flag beside the plaque. Ghost lifts his head, listening to something Isaiah cannot hear. Is he here? Isaiah asks softly. The dog looks back at him, then settles again. Isaiah smiles. You never answer the easy questions. He rises and walks to the memorial. With one hand, he touches Samuel's name. With the other, he touches Major's. The bronze is cool beneath his fingers. 2 names. 1 promise. Ghost stands and leans against his leg. Isaiah looks across the empty courtyard, where the ceremony had stopped, the soil had opened, and a voice lost to time had found its way home. He understands now that Ghost did not dig up the past. He uncovered the part of it that had been waiting to release the living. Some truths arrive through records, some through witnesses, and some rise from beneath the earth because a faithful heart refuses to walk away. The dead do not always ask us to mourn longer. Sometimes, they ask us to remember more completely.